Stretched it out? Okay. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody out to the Planning Commission meeting for November 17th, 2021. I'm Commissioner Mason. Eric Thomas has asked me to conduct the meeting. He's going to be a little late this evening. Let's see. As always, we'd like to start with an invocation or a thought. Commissioner Webb was asked to do that. Is he in attendance on Zoom?
I don't see him on yet.
Okay. In lieu of Commissioner Webb not present, do we have a volunteer for a thought or an invocation? Okay, I will give a quick prayer, followed by a pledge of allegiance by Commissioner Lunt. Thanks. Father in heaven, this evening as we come before thee, we ask for godly qualities in all that we do, and we ask for patience and understanding with our fellow man and our fellow citizens, and we ask for good discussion and open thought here in this meeting this evening, and we ask for those favors and blessings in thy holy name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. So as far as roll, we note that as stated earlier, Chairman Thomas, and I do want it noted that he's planning on being late because I see that we had a training on the agenda, and I'd like him to, if he attends, to be credited for that. So that he was, his intention was to be late, and then Commissioner Webb was going to join on Zoom. If he joins, will you please let us know, John?
Yeah.
Thanks. So he has yet to join. So we do have a quorum, and I think we can get going. We do have members of the public here tonight. Let's see. So I will read our opening meeting statement. Before each agenda item begins, the city staff will give a report. After the staff report, the item will be opened up for other speakers. The applicant will speak first and be allowed up to 10 minutes. Following the applicant, any other interested person will be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes. The applicant has final rebuttal time of up to 5 minutes. Any materials that are displayed or referenced, example, pictures or written materials, are part of the record and must be left with the commission. Speakers are required to have signed in at the door and will state their name and address before beginning their remarks. If you agree with the previous speaker, then state your agreement to avoid repetitious remarks. Speakers shall address the commission from the podium or microphone and shall address all comments to the planning commission. And please silence your phone. In addition to those protocols, we have a few modifications for those attending on Zoom. We ask that you, and you will be given opportunity to speak. If you do so, we ask that you use the raise your hand feature so that our moderator can allow your comments to be heard over Zoom. And we ask you otherwise to silence your microphone until you're ready to speak.
And
Okay.
Johnson is here.
Okay, let the record show that Commissioner Webb did make it. He is in attendance on Zoom. Thank you. Okay. We have ex parte. We don't have any meeting minutes to approve, I noticed, but we do have. So we will move on to the disclosure of any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest with tonight's agenda. Okay, let the record show none were given. And we move to public comments for items not on our agenda. So this is a couple members of the public are in attendance. We'll pause for a second, allowing for public comments for items not on the agenda. Sounds like everybody's here is interested in our agenda item. So without further ado, I think we can move on directly into it. Legislative item, it's number 5 on your agenda, which is a public hearing, discussion and action on the draft 2021 general plan future land use map. I think we're ready to go.
Start. Okay. Over to the commission, we also have 3 members of our general plan advisory committee here to help out with this. John, if you could.
Sorry, I turned the mics on just barely too. So.
Oh, you're just fine.
I don't think the mic is on.
Yeah, they take a little while to warm up.
Okay.
I said all that and it wasn't Mike.
You're loud enough.
Well, the Zoom caught you.
Okay. I still don't think the mics are
Just
on.
be ready. It's gonna pop on and it'll start.
Shock us.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I provided a staff report back. There it goes. General Plan Advisory Committee last met on October 27th, 2021, to review proposed amendments to the draft general plan future land use map. So in the 6 months that I've been here, General Plan Committee has met regularly, and they offered, actually staff kind of took that map and assisted with them to move it from a really solid recommendation over some of these specific items and bringing it forward. So I think that we've ended up in a good place. We've brought members of City Council, members of Planning Commission together along with GPAC to consider what we have tonight. And on October 27th, General Plan Advisory Committee made a recommendation unanimously to move the map forward that you see here. So from that night, I made the requested amendments. Would like to make sure with our members of the General Plan Advisory Committee that all of those comments were rolled in. There was a little bit of discussion on that northwest side we'll get to between Lowman View and Alberta, but for the most part, what we have is a General Plan Advisory Committee that's recommended and ready to be considered. So I think the easiest thing, and I don't want to belabor this, but it's just to run through the number 1 through 11 comments. So the one major takeaway about this is that the future land use map isn't being recommended to change a whole lot. And you have a 2015 general plan. It's a well thought out plan. What this is tweaks and refinements to that plan that I think bring it in line with what the city's goals are today. And then also in some cases, right sizing areas that might have been a bit of maybe an overreach in some of those conservation areas into existing subdivisions that were platted that really have no opportunity for clawing back or pulling back some preservation out of them. So with that, we'll just start on number 1. So we have three pending rezones, 3 tabled rezones, or I guess one was.
Can I interrupt you, Mr. S, real quick? So having recently attended a city council meeting where I was there to discuss an item that we had beat up for a couple hours, and then I felt like I only had a small time at the podium. I'd just like to invite our general plan committee that if you we'll throw a little bit of decorum out tonight, if this is okay with the commission, and if you guys have interjections or something that are clarifications, I just welcome that, because you're obviously here as our experts on this, and that's I just don't want you to feel like you're limited in having to come up and give a 3-minute remark or whatever. So does the rest of the commission feel okay with that?
Yeah.
Kind of breach of protocol? Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very much.
Sorry.
So we have 3 pending rezones that are all wrapped into this area called number 1, which is the downtown area of North Ogden. It includes a handful of existing zoning designations, mostly residential city center. There's some R2, R3 areas, and then residential R15. So what staff wanted to do is look at this area, look at that, some of the contested rezone areas, which are between Pleasant View Drive and Lowman View Drive, and determine in our recommendation what those areas should be. So we extended the northwest corner there to the North Ogden City shops, and that would pick up a piece of property that was in a rezone that has since been pulled, in an annexation area in a rezone that's since been pulled. And then also picked up the residential R15 5,000 square foot lots, which are just kitty corner to the south of the city hall, because I think that represents kind of a zoning district that represents in some ways the mix of uses that our downtown has. So grabbing onto in the general plan an existing land use and then using it kind of as an example in some ways of what could be applied in other areas seems to be applicable. So what staff is recommending in this number 1 area are zonings that would be the residential city center. Staff is making a policy recommendation that we add back 2-family dwellings to that. And then R2, R3, R4, and residential R15. And what I'd like the Planning Commission to help grapple with here is the city council's desire, or what staff has heard is a desire to have a vested general plan. And there's a number of ways to do a vested general plan. One is to do a blanket rezone of the entire city, which would bring the future land use map in line with the existing underlying land use map. That's hard, that's impacting to residential property owners who might have RE20 land today, but may desire in the future to have smaller lot, single family. So staff doesn't necessarily recommend that, but what we do recommend is that every one of these simplified future land use map color areas should have with it an underlying understanding of what zones would be permitted there. And then when an application comes in for a rezone, there's an understanding that the city has said, yes, in this area, up to these zones are permitted, or these zones are permitted. So it's a large area. It runs from approximately 2,000 on the south side up north all the way to Lone View Drive, east and west, a handful of blocks on each side of Washington Boulevard. So it's not saying R4 everywhere here, but that it's a permissible zone. It's something to have a conversation around. So as we're going along, I think we can either preview these areas and then have a discussion about them, or you can write notes and then we can talk through what would you prefer? Do you want to preview all 11 and then have a discussion, or do you want to talk about any one of them as we go along?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
maybe
think-
it'll be more fresh.
I would,
in
yeah.
the mind.
Yeah,
So
11.
the only other addition before I'll just ask, take a pause is north along Washington Boulevard, 400 East, as it sweeps past Alberta to the right. There was a recommendation for that first block back from Washington Boulevard, so 2850 north up to the corner where Lone View Cemetery is at, to be included as a 2-family dwelling overlay zone. So this is it's in 2 different zoning designations currently. That's kind of the complication of future land use map versus on the ground zoning. But right now it has residential city center zoning up to a certain point, and then you have residential R18 AG, which allows for agricultural uses. And the recommendation is there's been a request for 2-family dwellings there. We had a property owner come and speak to the General Plan Advisory Committee, and they pointed to the fact that 1 block south of them and 1 block north of them were both existing townhomes, existing 2-family dwellings, existing townhomes. And on their 1-acre parcel, they were permitted to have like X number of goats. And that there's just sort of this inconsistency, and that happens with some of the older areas of the cities. So for that 1 block length, it's not saying multifamily townhomes or apartments in this area, but some provision of increased density up to 2-family dwellings be allowed.
And
That's
that's,
where the 1A is. Okay.
And with that, I'll pause and see if there's any questions to this point.
What is, I'm just trying to picture, what is the makeup of that now? Are there duplexes there now?
On 20, I'm gonna get it wrong, but
That's okay, just
So,
generally.
yeah, generally between 2750, 2800 and 2850, there's one of those roads has 3 duplexes right next to each other. And then,
that's on 400 East though, right?
yeah, on 400
I can
East.
Yeah,
kinda
that's
picture
Washington.
that.
You go
I
up
can
and
kinda
when
picture
when
right
it turns
now,
the
yeah.
corner.
And then as you get, so 400 East itself has
Mhm.
duplexes on 400 and then also accessible on 450 on the
Mhm.
other
The
side.
problem with, just so we don't get so laser focused on the duplexes, the problem with this is, so if you're going to Washington Boulevard, you got the homes, and the Washington Boulevard's been widened, and you've got right on the corner of 2015 Washington, there's that group home that's kind of elaborate
Mhm.
on the left, and then you got the church across the street from that.
Mhm.
On the other side of the street, you got what they called the Proudfoot Mansion. That was what it was called forever and ever. It was an old building, but it's big, and it was an estate type
Mhm.
dwelling there. Then to the south of that, there are some smaller single dwelling units coming down. I mean, there's an array of
Yeah, there's-
building
there's
there.
kind of a
You've
mishmash in
got what I would consider in a couple of those state type places,
Mhm.
as well as single family, and then multifamily as it turns the corner. So that's tricky. Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's,
Good,
It
that
is-
was my only question.
it is tricky.
Yeah.
Any consideration on that area from the city shops between Lowman View Drive and Pleasant View Drive, heading northwest for a cap or a limitation on?
Supposed to go to and stayed in Cincinnati for another year, and it's a long story. And
So we got more people participating. So Grant Protzman's online and Mayor Berube is as well. So, and they are all listed as panelists, so they should be able to speak when they have a thought instead of having to raise their hands or anything.
It was Grant Protzman on our general plan committee as well.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
one of the co-chairs.
Fair. Okay. So I hope they heard my thing where I offered the open interjection of discussion here.
No changes, no. Okay. So moving to item number 2, this is an area that was previously in the downtown zone. If you can picture, let me go back to my staff report. So along 200 East, there are some estate lots. They're fairly narrow, but they're extremely deep lots. And
So the ranchettes or whatever.
yeah,
I hate to go back so far, but can we go back to the last item? So what's the overlay then there?
it's
people are saying the world
family dwelling. So what you'd have to do is create,
get a pass from it.
think of this document as future land use map with a list of policies.
It is 97.5 and 1280 is out.
C zone to allow 2 family dwellings.
Hey, Grant,
Yes,
if you're running the video on another device, it's coming through as feedback on our end.
let me see. I don't think so, but
Okay.
Maybe if you just silence or mute your microphone until you're ready to speak, that would get that echo back. There, I think it's gone.
does that get rid of it?
Yes.
Okay, I'm still not on mute. I just had a couple comments I wanted to interject into the discussion early. First of all, I appreciate Scott. I think Scott has represented what the committee did very well. Second, the committee's worked long and hard on this, and what we attempted to do is create a realistic plan based on what's possible, not what dreams are, but based on what's possible to preserve a lot of the elements of this community. Third, I hope that the clustering and the zone overlays are considered very carefully in all the decisions going forward, because they create the flexibility to really develop a new sense of community in many ways, particularly the clustering, the courtyard approaches, etc. As a community, the reality is, if we want our children to be able to live here, we need to do something to decrease the price of homes and lots. That means clustering and increased density, but it can be done in a way that maintains and actually enhances the sense of community by using the clustering options and the zone overlay options that are relatively modern tools. And I hope we can move from the old fence around a little lot with a little garden in the back concept, and recognize that the reality of growing population, decreased water resources and other resources means that we have to approach living in our suburban community a little bit differently. And these tools allow the Planning Commission, as they're considering options, to really be creative in how they put things together. So that's just the overview. The committee worked very hard and long on this. We wandered all over the place, and frankly came back to something that we feel was realistic, applicable, but allows flexibility to reflect the modern times that we currently face as a community. 2 other issues that I don't know if they're Planning Commission or not. Number 1, 2850 North and Washington Boulevard. There's a light going in there. I was told that it's impossible to do a roundabout there. I hope that we have that salted heavily during the winter, or that there's no snowfall or ice on the ground. That is a disaster coming down and going up if you have a semaphore there. It really is. A roundabout is a much better way to approach that. I was told the engineers wouldn't allow that. But I've looked at other communities where there are far steeper slopes and far less area that have roundabouts designed like that. So I don't know what our engineers were thinking, but that was a problem. And it's going to be a big problem unless I'm hugely surprised at this winter, having driving up there frequently in the winter and seeing people slide this way and that when they lose traction coming down or traction going up. It's just with a semaphore, a disaster waiting to happen. The second is the McDonald's intersection at Washington Boulevard in 2600 North. Goodness gracious. Anybody who comes down that hill and wants to turn right is going to cut through the parking lot or sit there backed up. We have 2 lanes going left. Seldom, I've been through there a bunch of times and I hardly see anybody turning left, but a lot of people want to turn right. We either need to restripe that or expand it or do something to allow a right turn out off of that McDonald's area. And to me, that's a planning commission issue that needs to be hopped on. So overview regarding the general planning commission recommendation for you folks, and then those 2 little issues, and I'll shut up. Thank you very much.
Since Mr. Mason voted the committee to go away with decorum, I would say, Grant, I don't believe that is a planning commission issue.
Oh,
That intersection is controlled by UDOT. We've been all over them on that right turn. They're not budging at all. But we are hoping to put a sign up there that would encourage people going through to stay in the left lane so we can get that done. But I don't think the planning commission ought to be kind of burdened with that. We're trying really hard, but that's the issue. UDOT saying the lanes have to be aligned going through the intersection, and they're just not.
okay. Well, thanks, Mayor. I appreciate that. Here, I thought the planning commission was more powerful than they are. We have.
No, they're powerful. Don't get me wrong. Get me wrong.
But we have state legislators. We have state legislators who can intervene with UDOT. I know that's happened in the past. When I was in, we did that on a number of issues, and our state legislators ought to get involved because that is chaotic right now. Sorry.
Duly noted. I actually agree with you. I don't see it, that's pertinent to necessarily our general plan discussion right now, but I actually completely agree with you on the practical basis. So thanks. Okay, Mr. Hess, you were answering a question that I had about you were kind of discussing, if I can just get us back to where we were. You were discussing what it would take for a rezone of a multifamily home along in that zone.
In that zone, so
Or in that area.
so
That's not a zone.
the areas that are residential city center, what you'll see after this will be, say the council accepts this, one of the easiest first zoning text amendments would be reinstituting 2-family dwellings into the residential city center zone. That would capture that. And then you would put language in the R1 AG code that would reference the general plan as 2-family dwellings permitted in this, and you create a boundary box, the geographic area in the code. So I would look at this as it's one step in many, that it comes along with some recommended policy changes, and we'll get into some that are even a little more complicated on the conservation side that we don't have the policy tools for today, but that the general plan, once you accept and adopt a general plan, kind of gives you the pathway for developing those other underlying zoning codes.
Okay, thank you.
So onto this area number 2, staff pulled back, we peeled back all of that land, except for we did leave the back half, the eastern half of those lots along 200, because they're large enough that it's, maybe this is pie in the sky, but it's possible in the future that you might end up with like a 225 East Street. If all those homeowners decided, or if enough of them decided to gather together and sell the rear back portions of their lots, you could potentially pull another little mini subdivision out of that. And I think that providing that in a multitude of zones that could be possible for it might leave that open as an option. But we could peel that all the way back to the property lines there, just out of the fact that they're already fully developed as
Yeah.
half to 1 acre lot.
That is fully developed. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this area, but what we're talking about is 1 acre lots that line the street, and they're long and skinny. And so I think I agree, it's potentially, I don't see it likely, but it's possible
Right.
that they would, you know, the backside of those lots could become their own lots.
Mhm.
I mean,
Number three, the area number 3 is included now in the downtown area. This includes all of the undeveloped land west of Patriot Point from 2550 north to the Montgomery Farm subdivision, which is the kind of the hard line in the sand, single family versus multifamily. That's a recently approved subdivision there. The zoning in this area would be C2 commercial. There is a small commercial component up on 2550, and then R4 MPC. And the MPC area, Patriot Point, includes commercial. So we had some questions and discussions of why would we continue to include MPC in really anything, because it's been problematic. And the reason is because it's one of our zoning tools that we have. So staff didn't look at this as an option for us to be, you know, subtracting elements. It was, these are the tools that we have. Let's make, you know, as broad as we can. And then the General Plan Advisory Committee, the Planning Commission, and City Council can make those further policy decisions to peel back. If there's a discussion about peeling MPC as a permitted use in any of these out, I would say that it should come with a recommendation to replace it with something, you know, so like an R5 zone that permits some reasonable level of density above R4, but maybe isn't fully open development agreement based zoning. So that again is a discussion for the Planning Commission to have as part of a recommendation to the City Council.
So right now in that number 3 area, you said 3 things: C2, R4, and MPC, right? Okay.
and just so we're all clear on what our scope is tonight, are we looking for, if we get far enough in this, are we looking to make a recommendation to the City Council this
Yeah,
evening?
if you feel comfortable, then make a recommendation to the City Council. Our goal was to get this done before the end of the year, but there's no obligation. If
Sure.
this needs to go another 2 weeks and another meeting, that's totally fine. It's a huge amount of information in one go.
Yeah.
So I'm comfortable either way.
Well, let's work towards that. I mean, I reviewed this before and I didn't see anything that was really jumping off the page at me. That was, you know, so let's go through it though.
Yeah. Obviously, you know, the subcommittee's put in a lot of work.
Yeah.
So need to review, you know, reinvent it, I guess.
Any concerns with 3 in the zones? Okay, so area number 4, this is the area that's called Southtown Center now. And well, there's Southtown, and then number 4 specifically is a commercial and a multi-family and a mixed-use area that staff has considered as, and I think this has been in the plans, but as Southtown Center. So you'd be focusing on the historic aspects of the cannery and Kurt's Drive-In. This is a future redevelopment area that could include a mix of uses, daylight and Cold Creek, creating a unique gathering place, some urban open space. And John, if you'd scroll just the map slightly south, thank you. And to me, what this says is we're going to focus our commercial, our economic development activity, our redevelopment focus here in this area, which leaves some of the area between, say, our standards box commercial north on Washington Boulevard and the cannery as likely future residential. It'd be rooftops that would then support the type of redevelopment that we want in this area number 4. Staff has also submitted to Wasatch Front Regional Council a letter of intent to do a centers plan here. If we're funded, that would be a consultant coming in and assisting with talking to those business owners about what their needs and goals are over time, and encouraging redevelopment as needed there, or as warranted by the property owners. We have a lot of really good homegrown businesses there that we want to preserve and keep in North Ogden, and redevelopment can be a little scary in that way that rents increase and kick somebody out, but that wouldn't be the goal here. It would be really focus on a historical center around those things that we cherish and are known icons. So no other, and then with this one, the policy consideration, the zoning there would be a future mixed use zone to permit housing along with walkable commercial. And looking back at what Rob Scott had been doing in about January of 2021, he was considering some level of walkable neighborhood commercial. And I don't know how far with the planning commission process that got, but he has some bare bones zone language and kind of a shell that we could work from to create that. Comments? Nothing? Okay. Number 5, this is property owned by Weaver School District. I have another one up on the hill that I need to turn over to civic uses, but there's kind of an intent to reflect the future uses when they're known school or other civic uses as our civic zone. So pretty simple on number 5. And then number 6 is a pretty broad extension of the Southtown mixed use. So this was formerly low intensity residential and commercial on Washington Boulevard. I think that this area as a whole represents one of the last really great not redevelopment, but development areas for the city to do another master sort of multifamily development and provide a lot of different housing choices and opportunities, likely with some stepping down of single family residential as you leave Spring Meadows on 1500 North, moving that direction. But it seems like a path of least resistance in an area of known interest for the city to be looking at where to put moderate income housing, which in North Ogden is really pretty high-end townhomes and condos, to be honest. So we've gone the entire area from 1700 North to 1500 North west of Washington Boulevard. That would be again C2 R4 MPC with mixed use, and added that green block there for the park spaces like a holder of a desire for a southwest area park. Where we met today with the Parks and Rec Director, Tiffany Staley, did I say that right? And that's been in the plan for a long time as a kind of a floating asterisk. And we'd like to encourage that through the general plan map to say in this area as part of development, as part of the trade-off of increased density, we do want some real usable open space as part of that development. All right, let's move to the stuff that I hope you have comments about. So staff, in one of the very first maps or presentations that we pulled out, I was fortunate enough to be moving my office from downstairs to upstairs and pulled out an old 1960s era version of the future land use map for the city. And it had, it's funny the things that they got right. It's interesting the things that were different on the ground. But one thing they had were many more commercial opportunities kind of sprinkled through the city. So staff leaned on that a little bit and made some recommendations and had some real interesting conversations with members of GPAC. But we have these potential future neighborhood commercial nodes. And again, neighborhood commercial would be a specific new a new zoning designation created. We don't even have it now, but
Yeah, can we describe that a little
yeah, so
more?
the way I think about it is it's not a convenience store. It would be it could be a dental office or a we care or
You go
pediatrics.
too far there. 2600, 1050 east can't be used. You've got a Barker Park there, so it's a conservation easement. There's only 2 buildings allowed on that place, like a pump house and a place of storage for equipment.
Yeah.
I just want to wait for the year 2045.
Okay, maybe.
What my opinion of my family and myself, 2045, that land will still be open and not developed as a park yet, and that easement will be gone. So now all my land will be in houses anyway. Which is
So-
contrary to my family want that land.
So what about across the street?
It's a house. There's house on all the corners.
So we have a comment here from our,
So this was one of the longest, hardest discussions we had. And I disagreed on putting the nodes because, but Scott had reasons for it. And so that we ended up putting them on there. But I think one of the things that we thought mostly was not to eliminate the opportunity of some type of
Steph, I just want to make sure your voices are heard on people on Zoom. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, if I come up and I talk
Yeah,
louder.
is that okay?
Yeah.
We threw out decorum, but we still got to accommodate to
no,
those
I
guys. Yeah.
understand, sorry.
So I gotta record.
Some of the things that we discussed and were described, is this one on? Oh. stand
Do you
right
want a
here.
seat over the table over there?
I think we can hear you.
That's okay.
We can hear you
Yeah,
better. yeah.
I'll talk loud. Some examples, like we've got the fish farm, there's just possibilities for organic, family type businesses to
Yeah.
possibly come as the city evolves.
Have a banana stand in Barker Park.
Yeah, I mean, like Julie's got a beautiful, big area, you know, imagine that being some kind of a fruit stand, a craft stand, something like that. My concern was eliminating that and not even having someone comfortable, if the opportunity arises, to bring it for a discussion to be looked at. I think it would be a real disservice to say, just no, you know, and I get that right now we talk about commercial up there and everybody's like, oh, and that's my reaction too. But at the same time as things evolve and we look at things like the fish farm or a possibility of a fruit stand, or one of the things we talked about in Farmington, where there's that old rock building that now just is like a little craft area, but it fits right in with the community. It really isn't, you know, we have a lot of great historic places in North Ogden. We have a lot of, you know, and as things changes, I just would hate to see that discussion eliminated.
That's why,
And I think the nodes,
2045, you're welcome to do that.
well, again, the nodes,
You're going to have a battle with the parties.
again, the nodes aren't saying this is where they should go. They were just examples of where they thought a possibility based on traffic and movement.
Yeah, but according to the conservation easement, that's not even a possibility.
No, again, it's not that's, and see, this is where I was concerned about the nodes, is someone saying, oh, look, they have that marked out for commercial, let's figure something out to put in there. That's not at all what it's meant to be.
John, you want to rewrite the easement?
Scott, what I'm saying is nobody's saying for there. He just put it there because it's busy. It's not, nobody's thinking commercial fits right there. That's just a busier intersection, you know? And so,
And I think it's important to note that this discussion in this tense is actually what should be happening, because
yeah,
we're talking about, should this be on the final map? We're not saying this is the final map.
before we get specifics, I'd like to first get a definition of what we're talking about. Because let's define low intensity neighborhood commercial, so we all know what we're talking about.
mhm,
Because when we hear commercial, we're thinking gas stations and possibly, right?
yeah. and
So,
that's-
so can you help me paint that picture?
Yeah, I mean, depending on how you include it, things like assisted living centers can be, are essentially low-level commercial uses. And we have those all over residential zones because they're a pseudo state qualified now residential use. But, you know, I live on the west side of Kaysville. Angel Street 200 North has a pediatric care, and it's a great neighbor. It's open until 5 p.m. then it's closed. All of their lights point downward. It's not a parking driver, and I've walked my kids to pediatric dental appointments. And so when I think of low-level neighborhood commercial, I think of 8 to 5 businesses that are neighborhood supportive. They could be a title office, it could be a small insurance office, it could be assisted living, it could be expansions of a fruit stand or something, you know, along the lines of what we have. And my favorite example in North Ogden is, if somebody were to come to you today at or near Barker Park or Barker Farms and said, I want to put a commercial fishing park, I want to put a commercial fishing operation here, what would you say? There would be no discussion. There would be even no consideration of it, right? But it's this cherished fish farm that is really important and has a long history, and people love it. And I went there as a kid, thought it was really neat. And it's at this point, this sort of odd legal non-conforming use.
Yeah.
And so it's to be determined. The planning commission would be able to determine the uses in that. It's not a C-store, it's not a convenience store, it's not even a restaurant. In little old single family homes like that, where it's walkable next to a future park, there's many examples of people turning their old homes into small boutiques or small restaurants or small anything else. So it doesn't have to be on the south side. In fact, that asterisk could move north, but that's saying somewhere along this stretch, it's a busy road, it's a known north-south, and it was a recommendation from one of the GPAC members to put it, you know, somewhere in here. Because Dan Nixon.
Okay, so should our discussion be first around, do we want that type of thing?
Well,
And then,
I've
and
got
then,
more if you want to just keep the controversial number sevens going, and then we can discuss all of them together.
okay. Okay, I have a lot of
Yeah,
thoughts about the
and
number
then, again,
sevens.
the nodes were, they were just specifically put where they saw possibility based on traffic, not, and certainly not in the park or in the park, but, there is the older home across the street that's got a lot of space. It could in 10, 15, 20 years evolve, and I would just hate for that discussion to be squashed. If it really is something that could fit and benefit the community, that discussion should be encouraged. That doesn't mean that it's going to fit or every idea or placement. I just think we want to be open to things. And we want to make sure that if something's coming, they're not looking at it and going, oh, they just don't allow it. And we just miss a really great opportunity because we've, just eliminated them.
I can really see that, like, once they really develop this beautiful park, maybe something across the street or on one of those houses, converts to some other use in the future, or something to support patrons of the park.
Yeah,
who
and
knows?
So there are number sevens all over the map. Well, a number of them.
Yeah, and number 7 is just, I think they were more just kind of ideas of just, it's not like we think it needs to go here. So unless it's here, it doesn't fit.
I definitely know there's two schools of thought. There's the school of thought, and I've talked to our councilman before on this, and it's like, we have to keep commercial out of the subdivisions and out of the neighborhoods. We have to. And that's a school of thought. Once you get the camel's nose under the tent, that will blossom into something more unwanted. Okay. And then there's the school of thought of, hey, these things might fit. I can think of when I was a kid, I used to ride my bike to a little store that's now a daycare center across from North Ogden Elementary. It was in a neighborhood. Henry Hall was selling apples down the street from there. It was kind of in a neighborhood, but it fit. And I do think there's I'm of the latter thought. I agree. I think there's potential here,
the
but
majority of us were the former, but
Yeah.
after a discussion, again, everybody's kind of like, and I get that. And nobody's saying right now, let's start looking for commercial opportunities and move them up. We're thinking future land use, and to just eliminate something, thinking about the fish farm, thinking about some areas that I think that's just a disservice. But I think in the description of it, that's where, kind of like the MPC right now, we're having trouble because it's maybe a little bit too broad. We need to be very specific in moving forward, I think, to make sure that it does fit what we're imagining and that we are not getting all of a sudden a 7-Eleven up here or, those kinds of things.
and it could correct me, legal counsel, if I'm wrong, but if it was the general plan did recommend something that didn't fit in with an easement or an ordinance or a land use that had been, like the Barker Park, then wouldn't that trump it? I mean, I'm not saying we should go ahead and just willy-nilly put things everywhere, but.
Yeah, the easement would trump any land use allowed.
So I'm only saying this for Commissioner Barker's sake, so he can at least have some peace of mind.
Yeah, and
No,
that's,
I know that already. You couldn't do it.
Okay,
Legally, you couldn't do it.
and again, I think it's not saying yes or no to anything. It's just simply, I think the ones that really best serve the community are going to organically evolve. As time happens and changes happen, they'll organically present themselves.
so right now,
And-
if somebody wanted to put a little building that they sell balloons out of inside of once Barker Park, let's say it's 5 years from now and Barker Park is magically happens finally, okay, and then somebody wants to put a little shack in there and they sell balloons out of it. They couldn't do that at this point in time.
No.
And I'm not making a comment that that's good or bad. I mean, but that's impossible.
And I think at this point, I can't imagine any commercial space being brought, in residential that it would fit at this moment in time. I can't see where that would be, except for possibly the corner of Mountain Road and Fruitland right now, and it would completely be based on what their idea was. So this is somewhere again down the future, and as things change, that's where those start to present themselves. And I think the discussion we want to encourage those discussions. That doesn't mean that it'll always fit or it'll always be right, but we'll never know if we don't have that discussion. So,
Okay, so, and your reasons for where you placed number 7 on the map, as long as you're up here.
we knew that the asterisks and the numbers we were placing were nothing but ideas, and someone here thought maybe it would fit. We had a committee member who was like, maybe here one time, and we put it there simply for that. It's, you know,
Okay.
again, I thought that they shouldn't be, but the planning, you know, staff recommended that they should as examples. So, you know,
Is that why it's not like kind of drawn out in a zone like the rest of them?
yes.
They're kind of
I think that
spots.
those are just kind of ideas of maybe this could feature, you know, based on
Somewhere
how
in this
growth
area.
happens
I see.
in the city. Yeah. They're simply, I mean, you could wipe out 7 and it wouldn't affect anything. So.
Okay. Great discussion, really.
While I'm up here by the microphone, can I say one more thing?
It's free form. We threw out the quorum.
We were talking, when you guys talked about the 2-family dwellings and putting them back into some of the zoning. I would love to see that discussion of those just allowed in the city in any zone.
A 2-family dwelling?
I think they're a great way to get moderate income housing into our community in a low impactful way. And it also puts different kind of housing and families in different areas. You know, I saw quite a few up in Lakeview Heights that I hadn't been familiar with, and they were beautiful, fit right into the community and offered different housing options. So
I
I
had a
would love
vision.
to see that discussion at some point.
Yeah, I had a vision for that kind of thing in the area where the golf course is, and then where what became, it was in that area. It wasn't just that very property that was developed, but the neighbors showed up in droves against that idea. I thought they could have been beautiful buildings and stuff like that. You know, I wanted a development agreement on there with those things to kind of ensure that, but public sentiment is hard to win when they hear,
Yeah, and
because it's
well, I think
multifamily.
because it seems like we're doing a lot of all of one type. I mean, I think of a neighborhood and, you know, if we had a developer who's developing a neighborhood and we say, you know, well, there's benefit to making 2 of your homes 2-family dwellings that fits right in the neighborhood. But right there, you've got 4 different housing options that fit right in with the community. You know, they're not down on the, you know, we kind of seem to be pushing them all and,
Talking to her.
you know, I'm not a huge fan of that. I like, you know, the more we can incorporate, but also making sure that we're being respectful and non-impactful to existing homes. There are just ways to do it. There's so many options.
Is that where the giant swath of number 10 came from? Was that sentiment? I noticed number 10 shows.
Oh, yeah, because that's a space for a possible commercial organically based on what it is now. I mean, it's a big fruit stand.
Yeah, part of the reason for 10, the size of it is likely, I mean, it's way too big. Obviously, that's probably like 5 acres.
Because it's his favorite.
But that one is, on number 10 is a future east-west road that will connect Fruitland Drive to Mountain Road. So that's one of those key east-west routes in the city. So we'll talk about that one, 8 and 9, but let's talk really quickly about the other 2 number 7 spots. So in addition to somewhere along 2600 and approximately between, I'd say, Mountain Road and 1050 East is 3100, the Ogden Divide Road. And if you're familiar with Mason Cove and White Rock subdivisions, it's fully developed up there. There's really not a whole lot of opportunity for this, but there might be little pocket areas. And had somebody 40 years ago made a little commercial spot up there on the Ogden Divide Road as you exited the city, they would have made a killing. You know, the number of people who probably think, oh, I forgot ice, and now they got to drive up and over the hill and stop at a convenience store on the other side. And then in that similar vein, there was a comment about Mountain Road as it exits up into Pleasant View at 4300 North, having a similar opportunity for some sort of commercial on the north side of the city.
Well, I remind the commission that we heard from Mr. Protzman this evening, and he talked about the dangers of driving down Washington Boulevard in the winter, right? And how many people live up north of that intersection that he spoke of. So if there was some way to, oh, hey, I just need a cup of milk or a glass of milk or whatever, if there was a little C-store or something up there, little, it would probably serve the community well, so they don't have to traverse down. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna get to Julie Anderson's gonna approach us here, just for the record. I don't think so.
Sorry. So as we talk about number 7, as we sat in the meeting, I told them a spot that I know would most probably work better than 2600. It is on Mountain Road, and it's on the corner of Mountain Road and 2750. It is actually Ginger Brown's property. It is in the county right now, but that would be a perfect place for what you're talking about, which is a small, as we call them, off licenses in England. They were just small little stores that carried the most basic essentials. For us kids, it was great because they had the 1 penny candies, But that is an area that is highly used because you've got the people either riding on horses, bikes. So when we talk about these little asterisks, they're on what is considered will either be a future main road, where it can sit in. If any of you go down Monroe Boulevard, there is that one little white grocery store that sits right in the middle of all the homes. You don't even notice it until you come upon it. Those are the kind of things that we're talking about. People are concerned about, we're not talking about the 7-Eleven with gas and all that kind of stuff. We're talking about small businesses, or as he said, a wee care center. Those kind of things, as we grow, we're bringing in more children, we're bringing in all of those things. And so for me, that's how I looked at number 7. When they put one there on the corner of 1050 and 2600, for me, obviously it was like, well, it won't work anyway. You've got homes on all the corners, and then you've got Barker Park. But I understood what Scott was saying to us. And so there are places where I think stuff like that will be very, very convenient. We don't want the elaborate stores. We don't want, but just something. When we bring in businesses to North Ogden, they need to cater to us, the citizens, and what we need. We talk a lot about bringing in all these big businesses and stuff, but is it really what North Ogden needs? We have residents here that, do I like the idea of commercial in my residential area? No, of course not. But at the same time, we're having people move in who are used to that. And and so I think for me, that explains the asterisks and how we came up with Scott's help to understand where they should be placed. Is places that are future growth, which is Mountain Road. It's gonna go all the way out to the freeway, and we know that, so I think as we talked about the number 7s, it was a long discussion, but there are places and there are uses for those small little areas. And you do like Park City does, you require them to look a certain way, that they fit in, that they look a part of the community. So when you go past them, you go, oh, that is, I forgot, there's that little store right there. So that's kind of how we came up with the 7s, was that there was places where there was the possibility of in the future that being an option for us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Not to open this can of worms, but in that area she described, the Ginger Brown property, I think would have been an ideal place also for a amphitheater. So, yeah. I mean, sit on the hill, and anyway, it's.
I noticed you've got a 4th asterisk down where it looks like Monroe might meet 1700.
So
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, so Monroe in the future, right now it's disconnected north-south bits and pieces, but ultimately that will be an extension of Monroe out of Ogden.
I think that's probably a great
In
place.
that location, it seems to make sense. There's other spots along Monroe. 2600 in Monroe, which is now Mountain Valley Village subdivision, but as you move a little bit further north, Monroe will continue to represent an opportunity. And you're moving from 21,000 people to 40,000 people. The other option is every single trip gets funneled down your north, south, east, and west roads to 2 roads, Washington Boulevard and 2600 northwest of Washington Boulevard. And this idea, I grew up in a neighborhood where I could ride my bike as a kid to a very small grocery store in Sunset, and I loved it. And I had freedom as a little kid to go out there. And now as a parent, I'm not sending my kid to the grocery store out there. I mean, it's just not, it's not safe. It's not the same type of road that they were when we grew up. So it's not something that, it's an idea. It's this additive idea. It's to put it out there and then have this sort of discussion about it. And I really appreciate the discussion. So whatever you want to do as far as recommendations go, we're happy to do it.
I still, you seemed like you wanted to move on past 7. I mean, do we want to
So
decide?
7, 8, and 10 are all discussions on commercial. So if we want to do those together, 8 is actually selecting parcels. It's the corner of Mountain Road and Fruitland. And that's been in various states of use and intensity over years. Right now, it's pretty low intensity use. It has not a super attractive privacy security fence around it and fewer vehicles parked on it. But if you look back a few years on Google Maps, it had heavy construction equipment and all sorts of stuff parked on it. That seems like somewhere that, I've often, if I'm going out Harrison Boulevard to go home or to my in-laws, I'll drive up and take Mountain Road out. And it seems like a good spot that would be both for the future growth that we're going to see between Fruitland and Mountain Road, but also to bring maybe Ogden residents up to, in that location, maybe a small convenience store, maybe a small gas stop in that spot that again discourages every single person living on 1700 North to have to go west, to have to hit Washington Boulevard and north or south to any future use. And 10 being the same thing, that we looked at the intersecting points of future major roadways. And when I say major, I mean like collector and above. But right now that's a pretty serene little agricultural corner of Fruitland and 2100. But in the future, that's going to be an intersection, and 2100 will continue to the east and likely surrounded by relatively small lot, single family housing all the way around. And that's my end on commercial for all things. East of Washington.
So commissioners, I'll give you my thoughts and then please help me out, share your thoughts. But I actually like the idea of embedded light commercial in our subdivisions. I don't know if I like 8 and 10. I don't know if I like those locations for those. But conceptually, I think our general plan committee was kind of onto something here with this. Speaking of 8, I knew people that bought a great big plot of land there right on the corner, and a beautiful home. It's older, but it's beautiful. And the guy's wife was adamant that they need to move because she's like, across the street's going to be a gas station. Across the street's going to be a gas station. And I remember telling her, well, hey, not as long as so-and-so's on the city council, because they're really dead set on keeping commercial out of our neighborhoods. And she was like, oh yes, absolutely. And so I just don't know if, those people that have lived for so long along Fruitland Drive and Mountain Road, if they would really appreciate that commercial. I don't know. I see it, up near the gravel pit, and because there's be people coming to park there and go hiking and stuff like that. I just don't know if I see it along that corridor, but it's for a reason. Yeah, please.
I agree with that. I think 7 makes sense to me. I actually spent a lot of time around that area as a kid.
Johnson
would ride horses in that area, play in those fields. I think that one connecting Monroe makes a lot of sense. I think up by the gravel pit makes a lot of sense. I think 8 is an important kind of entry point into North Ogden. And I know it's had, if you look at Google Maps, it's had various uses. One of the things that, was embedded in previous general plans was the language of a country feel. And it seems to me that 8 and 10 are specifically areas where we could try to maintain a country feel for North Ogden. I know that we've got to And I actually do like the idea of, small things embedded so that you create some community around there. You create more walkability. People don't have to drive so far. It keeps some traffic off of the road. I like that, but I think we need to be very careful with where those things are placed. A lot of these points, even along Washington Boulevard, they kind of set a tone coming into North Ogden. And so Julie made a comment earlier about, Park City, and we're certainly not Park City, but one thing that is nice is there's a feel in some of their signage. You kind of, as you come in and whatever 8 is going to be in the future, it would be nice as a part of this discussion, and this discussion might take weeks, it might take longer than that, who knows, to recognize that it's like an entry point into North Ogden in a more kind of country feel type of thing. Fruitland Drive is a gem of a road. There's no one who drives down Fruitland Drive and doesn't feel nostalgia, beauty, serenity. You see farmland, you come onto the Barker Farms, and that's something that's so unique along with our mountains. And I think that there are certain things that need to be preserved. One last comment with this, and it's a little bit poetic, so bear with me, but within the last 10 days, had to go down to Walgreens. And so went through the drive-through, and instead of turning left and cutting through the Smith's parking lot, I went right, went west, and circled back to 2700. And there's that white barn. And as I drove by it, there were 2 hawks sitting up on the big board that kind of comes out, looking at that field and probably just looking for mice. And the thought that I had with that is, oh man, if we lose that barn, one more barn that we lose, I mean, it would be really neat if somehow that type of building was preserved and turned into something, as was mentioned earlier, the Rock Hotel in Farmington has turned into something commercial, yet it still has like a tone of history and beauty in it. And I just thought, man, there's just some important elements here that we do have to think creatively about, and on how to preserve but also evolve. And I think 8 is one of those. I think it's a Fruitland Drive, Mountain Road. There's a tone that if it just turned into a gas station, that would be a loss. But if it turned into something that was a marker for North Ogden, that could be a win. So anyway, that's probably too long of thoughts, but just a couple of things there.
Thanks.
So I just wanted to say, here's my concerns with the asterisk, is we're already talking about what kind of commercial would go here and there. And I think that defeats the purpose of the discussion I remember us having is, I don't want people to start thinking, oh yeah, that's zoned for commercial. We think commercial should go there. I don't think it fits at all right now. And in the discussion I remember, I don't think C-store gas up in those areas. I can see again organically somewhere down the road. I'd just like that discussion to be available. But we're getting hung up on the spots as like, what if commercial was there? And it's like, that kind of isn't really the purpose that I think we're looking at, is like, oh yeah, let's put commercial here. What would that be?
Well, can you describe then? Because I'm following you, and with the 7s, you're saying, hey, they can go anywhere. And Julie gave us an example of somewhere else, but I guess I don't understand 8 and 10 because they look like
They were spots.
Oh, they're spots. They're just different
They're
shape. The
specific
triangle
spots,
is
yeah.
like, okay, I was actually thinking 8 was a swath of land that you were zoning out.
And it kind of is. I can see that becoming something, it's a really great example of something that could evolve into, but no, I can't see a gas station there. That would be where we would be really clear on what being put there, just because it's like neighborhood commercial. I think being very specific on what neighborhood commercial is going to be important to making this successful, and the community understanding and being, kind of behind it.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that in 10 or 15, 20 years, council and general plan are saying we now have a need for C-stores and gas. And so but trying to be realistic as our community is changing, things are being built and changed.
Mhm.
You know, there's a possibility of, you know, missing something that could be really a great part of our community. I also see it as a way maybe for landowners who have orchards or larger space to maybe keep it longer because they have some options of what they can do now with it that, you know, make it something that is part of the community that could be a little bit of a commercial space rather than immediately needing to sell.
Okay.
So. Final
So
thought.
were you anticipating that when you put 8 and 10 on there, you were kind of thinking a lot, kind of specific along there?
Yeah,
'Cause
and
I-
I think staff had some, you know, and again, you're talking, those of us who are like, no commercial. With staff, we see it different and where the discussion evolved and this is kind of us finding that medium.
Okay.
Yeah, those were two pretty specific spots. It's the intersection of two major corridors. And then on the other one, it's Fruitland Drive and 2100, again, intersection of two major corridors. So economic development happens when you have the right land use or an appropriate land use with the right transportation opportunity. And that is it. Farmington Station exists in its location because it's the convergence of I-15, Legacy Corridor, Highway 89, and a front runner line. And California.
If I could just interject the thing here, I'm going to have to move to another location, may miss part of the meeting, but historically, I don't know how many people remember Ken's AG Market, which is where Casper's childcare is now, but that was a real community gathering spot at a time we only had one elementary school. And I think what I envisioned with these asterisks and so on was that kind of a setting where people could go pick up a few simple things, maybe like the straw market is over in Pleasant View at this point. And it creates a sense of neighborhood, a sense of community, and a sense of togetherness that we really miss with the big box stores. I have nothing against Lee's or Smith's, but these kinds of facilities meeting particularly neighborhood needs are really a blessing. And the old master plans for North Ogden had these scattered throughout the community. And I think all we're doing in our suggestion is saying, these are concepts that need to be considered in the future. We don't want to offend any neighbors, but what we want to do is put something in that will enhance the sense of community and a sense of neighborhood and make it easier to send the kids to pick up a loaf of bread or a jug of milk or a little bit of ice or some sweet rolls, etc., rather than having them have to go down to the big box markets to do it. So it's kind of a return to the past in many ways, but some of the things in the past were pretty nice. And if we can return to those, it may enhance our sense of community and unity.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Grant, Mr. Mason, could I just say something?
It's free form, Mayor. I'm going to have to let you.
Thanks for your consideration there, Brandon. You know, those are great ideas, but I just came from that industry. I think the probability of doing that without a full C-store is very close to zero because nobody can make that work financially today.
Yeah.
So I just think we need to be realistic and look at that and say, if we're going to do that, I mean, it's ideal, but I just don't know if anybody's going to do that when they can't make money.
I think that stuff could still be controlled based on the size of the buildings and stuff we allow, you know. And so like, you know, that way we could allow a fruit stand, but not maybe even a C-store.
Right. Yeah.
So we have another comment, and while she makes that, I'm gonna share my thoughts. Grant, I expressed that same nostalgia for that same store you're talking about across the street. I guess where I disagree with this is that, you know, Scott told us that it's a convergence of good transportation corridors. And I guess I disagree that Fruitland Drive and Mountain Road should be our major thoroughfares for, especially Fruitland Drive.
We can pull up the traffic map, but I'd argue that Mountain Road right now has probably greater traffic on it than you.
No, I agree that it does. I just think, you know, as a guy who wants to preserve something in North Ogden, I think Fruitland Drive has a character that we can preserve and we can move traffic onto Monroe Boulevard. And so that would be my vision. And
I agree with that. I think moving traffic onto Monroe versus Fruitland Drive is probably pretty important.
perfect example of what I'm thinking and what I imagine is Cafe Mercantile on 26th in Ogden. If you guys haven't been there, I suggest going. It's an awesome little, they have, you know, cookies, coffees, it's just a house. And there's always like this little hum of people around and it's really great.
26 and like one block above Harrison.
26th and walk up, yeah,
Yeah.
one block up from Harrison. That's what I imagine. Like, I love that. I think that that's really great. Just to be specific, the rest I'm gonna let you all hash out. That's why we're passing it on, just so you know.
I just want to make sure I didn't cut anybody off with my comments there. I felt like a mayor was speaking and I kind of cut him off.
Hashed out the streets and all that, but I want to give example.
And it's certainly not an idea that the staff's going to, you know, follow my sword over, but it is something to think about. I totally appreciate your comments of the people who bought in this area expected one thing and they don't want to get another. And I also appreciate the other side of, we still have 20,000 more people to grow in this city. And those folks might appreciate on the other side in 15 years or in 20 years, thinking about opportunities for neighborhood walkable commercial in strategic locations that make sense so that they don't have to drive a mile west to get anything or everything. And so I'm, you know, I'm in between those two feelings of preserve everything as it is, and things are inevitably going to change. And how do you do that in a responsible and effective way that will provide for opportunities in the future? Because, you know, Fruitland Drive, we pulled out, number 9, we pulled out massive swaths of conservation area around Fruitland Drive, simply for the fact that there were permitted, beautiful, fully legal single-family subdivisions that have gone in since the 2015 plan. And we've permitted them because they're what we know and we just expect. And in that vein, Fruitland Drive will just change and go away just by the sheer basis of we're accepting subdivision plats and applications with no potential like conservation or no consideration of it, just because it feels fine to accept those single family homes. So
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point, Scott. And I think if the goal is to preserve Fruitland Drive, there needs to be some real specificity around, if we don't do things, what's going to happen that would cause it to erode, and how can we actually do something that would enhance and preserve, you know, that. And that's tricky, you know, around some really specific spots like that.
Just comment, it seems like part of Fruitland Drive is already eroded and gone because of those subdivisions, and that road's accessing on the Fruitland Drive. That part of Fruitland Drive to me is already gone. There are parts that may be okay, but that part to me is gone. I'm not sure how you preserve the rest of it. And eventually that land along the rest of Fruitland Drive is going to be sold. And the city's going to have to decide it's going to go subdivision, what's going to go in there. Because it's not going to last forever, and the families aren't going to hold on to it forever.
Yeah.
I was contacted, here's another example, maybe just small scale commercial, but I was contacted by a property owner who had multiple acres, beautiful kind of estate location, and she wanted a home occupation that would permit her to host weddings. And it would require catering on site, and she wanted to do like commercial hoods and just not a restaurant, but, you know, prepare food on site. And in that location where she had the right parking and this beautiful, you know, tree surrounded setting, she sent me pictures. It was like, yeah, this seems really reasonable, but it's embedded in a single family zone. And so some of this like commercial discussion could be things like agribusiness. So you get to preserve your agricultural farm by doing an enhanced some sort of enhanced fall festival or fruit stand or something like that. So it could run the gamut of things, but and I really, you know, Steph Casey, she had this thought that I don't want to locate them on the map, but I want to leave the conversation open. And you can write that language into a general plan, but the map is the thing that people look at. No one's going to read you make general plans super short and bullet points still, it's, you know, it's like difficult to get anybody to read it. But the map is something people can latch onto and say, oh, there's a little potential commercial opportunity here. Maybe we'll explore that. Where if it's just a swath of yellow, low intensity, single family residential, I think that you would miss opportunities that you may even not realize that are sitting out there. But also, you know, I'm trying to sell it to you right now in some ways and also just giving you information, but it's totally, I mean, this is your city. I live 25 miles from here, and while I would love it, I've gone to Cafe Mercantile. That's a great little embedded coffee shop in the neighborhood. 15th and 15th is a center in Salt Lake that has a small bookstore, it has a small restaurant, and it's just this little micro center. And so they exist, but it's totally, it's your community and what you want to do.
The reception idea did come to you though.
The reception idea.
Yeah, that you just said. So that made its way to you.
Yep.
So I just, you know.
It's true. But I don't know how
I'd
you.
like it to say that you could have that discussion and bring it to council rather than immediately say to her, sorry.
Yeah.
That's where I think is.
Mhm.
Great points.
Yeah.
I like the idea of it only because, you know, the city is growing. The further we go up the hill, whatever, you know, just to have these opportunities somewhere in the city, I think spread out a little bit more as traffic is rerouted, I think makes a lot of sense for the future. Maybe not exactly today, but I think that time will come.
So in the same way you described how a multifamily home would get on property 1A, how would residential, if, you know, if we recommend this forward to the city council, because I really like what they've done with these recommendations. How would 7, 8, 9, 10, what would the path
Yes.
forward to commercial be there?
So we'd have to write a neighborhood commercial zone, the planning commission recommended and the council accepted for the limitation on the types of uses that could go in, and then locate those somewhere, you know, east of Washington Boulevard, and be kind of give it a boundary of locations that it could go, or say as supported by the general plan, and then as the general plan changes, and then it would be a property owner or developer's recommendation, they bring in a property. And the nice thing about having it be rooted in the legislative decision making, the fact that it requires a rezone, is that the city's under no obligation to accept those rezones. So the city has broad capability of accepting or denying those rezones based on what did Brent Bateman say, that the level of discussion, a reasonable, like reasonability test. John, do you remember?
They don't.
It's not, it's more than a scintilla of evidence. That was another one, but it's basically, if you can reasonably argue that it's good and you can reasonably argue it's bad, you can deny it and you're in legal good standing. So if someone brought it something in and they felt like that's too intense in this location and the council shut it down, then that would be the end of that part of that discussion. And maybe it's nose in the camel's tent and we want to peel it all back and do more like on the map, you could have a neighborhood commercial and just some text that says in areas that support agribusiness or urban farming or fruit stands or that sort of thing, that makes sense, come and apply, and we'll have that conversation.
It seems like that type of specificity could be very helpful.
It does probably limit some ideas we're not thinking of, you know, reception center in a somewhat suburban area that's not really agricultural.
But even looking at this, if I were one of these people, I'd be looking at this and saying, well, I guess I could do it if I'm here, 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 or here, but not necessarily, but I'm over here, would it make sense here? And so just a note on the map or something that states what Scott was just saying. I don't know how you'd best put that, but that would make more sense to me.
Work on that.
Okay.
Or we just multifamily all those.
Okay. What's our appetite for a recommendation this evening? Guys, do we want to chew on this? Do you want to see something else?
I'd like to see it chewed on a little bit.
And what specific points would you like chewed on?
Well, look at 7, 8, and 9. It seems like those are pretty fluid.
7, 8, 10.
So
So hold those.
they're pretty fluid
Yeah.
and movable. I'm not sure how you find a way to work that so that people understand that it's not an absolute position, that there are fluid and can be moved.
Sure.
But people do look at that and say, well, that's a nice spot. I like this spot better. Can we look at that idea?
Yeah, I'll think about that in a way to graphically show it, but if nothing more, we can have a note on the map that is kind of to the point of neighborhood commercial as supported east of Washington without the specific location or something like that, and then give some examples of what that looks like.
Would be okay.
And then at least it's the first step. And then if growth continues to happen, and you start to see some interest in it, then maybe the general plan, which should be reviewed every 5 years or so, is opened back up and you get maybe more specific.
Okay, so let's throw out 7, 8, and 10 real quick, because we've had lengthy discussion on that, and Commissioner Barker's requested a reverbage of this. Do we have any other concerns with any other of the items that were brought forth?
Well, I still have 9 and 11 to tell you.
I have concerns with 9 and 11. I wanted them off. No, I don't really, but, okay, sorry. Okay, I was looking to move this forward, but,
Well, so we still have, item number 9.
okay, I'm not trying to rush you through it.
No, you're fine.
I honestly thought we were done.
No,
What's that?
But get on with it.
So number 9, this is that protection area. It's originally, when we go way back to the hand-drawn map that I gave you 6 months ago or so, the urban agricultural protection areas. And these are unfortunately reductions in that potential conservation area based solely on existing underlying land uses and developed park space, which is just not expected to change. So we're right sizing the map at this point. And by doing that, I don't want to, well, I'll just but I'm going to use one specific subdivision as an example, and that's Northwood Hills. In Northwood Hills, Visionary Homes, 2600 North, east of Barker Park, beautiful subdivision. Homes in there are $600,000 to $750,000. It's great. It was in the conservation area. It received a rezone from RE20 to R110 legally, and it has no conservation in it. It's just 100% of the land was requested to be rezoned. It all got in there. And so what staff has tried to do is look at some other examples of communities around the Wasatch Front that had more specific policy recommendations for how to do conservation, and then put that in here. So in the urban agricultural preservation, staff's recommendation is to utilize, you can move from an RE20, which most of this underlines that land is zoned RE20, to an R110. That's a doubling of your density essentially, but you have to give up 30% land conservation. So the property developer at a 10-acre parcel with 20,000 square foot lots is going to get 21 lots, give or take steep hillsides and when you do the streets and your detention basin. But to make the math easy, it's 21 lots. A 10-acre lot with 30% land preservation leaves you with 7 acres remaining, and then you apply the double density of 10,000 square foot lots and you get 30 at that point. So they get 1.5 times the density and we get 30% open space out of it. And I had a conversation with 3 different developers, 2 of which who have developed in the city multiple times, and everybody said, yeah, that seems pretty reasonable.
Grant Protzman, are you still online?
He is not.
It's not, no, I was wondering if this was the clustering he was talking about.
It could be, yeah.
This is it.
Yeah, you could use this as clustering, and it's clustering, but it's basically giving people the same thing we've been giving them, but now getting something back out of it.
So meaning there'd be 30% like open space preserved.
Yep. And there's a number of ways that you can do this. So Farmington has a zoning code that permits it to come in as money. So maybe we don't want 3 acres in that particular location. So we give the developer full rights to do R110 across the entire thing, but then they're going to pay us fair market value for that 30% of acreage. So they'll still make a little bit of money. They won't make as much money as if they've gotten 42 doors on there instead of 30. You can do it that way. Park City or Heber Valley, for every subdivision that goes in, there's a formula of X number of lots are just given to the city. And then the city sells them on the open market and they use those funds for other uses. So they don't preserve open space, but they then go out and buy specific open space, or say the city's goal was to have gold-plated, excellent, amazing trailheads, you could sell those funds, and it's a quote impact fee essentially to then go out and provide betterments in other areas. So there's a few ways to do this, but I think that it feels a little bit not genuine to have a potential conservation area on the map and not have a tool that keeps some of that land in conservation, except for overlaying it on property owners like the Barkers who want to remain farming forever. That's not the case for everybody. So staff's recommendation is doubling of density approximately for 30% land conservation. And that would go the same, like 30% land conservation, even if you went to an R18, or in some cases, maybe like a multi R15 or something like that, but begin to look at, they're going to give something up in terms of betterment or park space or open space or funds if they want to get that increased density. And land is so valuable right now, I think that we stand a good shot to get it.
Mayor Ruby's just raised his hand.
Okay, yeah, I will save my comments then. Mayor, go ahead.
Scott, you and I and John went out and looked at some, what I think are attractive, high-density homes on 4,500 square foot lots. We saw those out in the Layton area and some in West Haven. Where would you envision? Is that what you might be talking about here with some of this higher density and conservation, or where do you see the potential for something like that?
Yeah, I do in those areas that are, say the Woodfield Farms, so Rainy Homes development, which is 1,700 north and now almost to Monroe on the south side. Those are 8,000 square foot lots. If that developer wanted to move towards a cottage subdivision or a cluster subdivision of 4,500 square foot lots, say, absolutely, we're willing to permit you to do that, but the trade-off is that we need a pocket park. We need an improved open space in that area. So this to me would go, I think it could be applicable to our areas where you're currently zoned R110 and we permit an R15 or 4,500 square foot lot. But again, you get something out of it.
I like that concept, Scott. I really like that. That's a concept that used to be practiced prevalently in the earlier days, but somehow we got away from that. So I like that concept because we do need to retain some open space and some pocket parks. So I really like that concept.
I'm also in favor of it.
And then just moving forward quickly to number 11, it's the HP 1, 2, 3 zones. We applied the same thing, a 50% increase in density for a 30% open space, keeping 30% open space. And I used HP 3, that's 2 acre lots. So a 50 acre parcel at 2 acre lots, you can get 25 lots. You remove 30% of the land, so you get a 15 acre something up there on the hill, 35 lots or 35 acres remain. You increase the density 50% and then go to 37. So again, it's about that 1.5 times the number of doors that they can get. And straight out of one developer said, I can sell an 8,000 square foot lot for basically the same amount of money I can sell a 5,000 square foot lot, depending on how I option the house. So there are buyers out there who will pay the increased price for a smaller lot if it comes with some higher end finishes, and some people just value the inside of their house, or they don't want to take care of these large lots. And 8,000 square feet is a large lot, but some folks don't want to have hardly any yard maintenance.
Yeah, they're called Las Vegans.
So those are two, and again, that comes with a laundry list of policy considerations that would be followed by the general plan through the planning commission, the city council, to write code that would then require or be permissive of doing this. Because the only way to do this right now is through development agreement with the city council. Which is fine.
In fact, Scott, I would say, we need to consider this concept when we upzone any properties these days, because it has to be a win-win situation for the city and the developer. So, we've been doing a lot of upzoning in the city lately, and I think there's a reason for that. We've got to provide places for people to live. But, this concept ought to start applying, maybe more broadly than you're even thinking.
I agree with that.
I like the concept.
And maybe the areas of the potential conservation easement, that the planning commission should be having more of these legislative type conversations about how do we preserve that area? What do we do, and do we get more aggressive
Well,
in those areas?
again, it takes an educated public to not oppose these things, from my experience, and I don't have a lot of experience, but it's like anytime they can see the smaller number, the higher density, there's just a general freak out that, oh, and so it would take some education really, that there is some trade-off, that open space is being preserved for this. So
Brad, I think you're right on. I'd like us to come up with a different term, and I think we've actually talked about this, Scott. The term density, as you said, just turns people off. Just the word itself. So conceptually, we need to market this in a different way, but be, transparent what we're doing. But you're right. As soon as the word high density is used, people kind of shut off.
call it a density offset zone or something, I don't know.
And John asked me to earlier today, and then I got stuck into our Title 11-12 reorganization on the council, but to contemplate what does low, medium, and high density mean for North Ogden City. And I think your low density is RE20. That's basically that, and HP2, anything that's at acre and over. And medium density, low density to some degree is like R12.5 or 10,000. But for our city, it's like 8,000 to 5,000 square foot lots, maybe to R2, like a 2-family dwelling is that medium. And then anything beyond that is sort of high. But it's a spectrum, high density. We could say Village of Prominence Point, which really pencils out close to 40 units per acre. It's way higher than any of our R4 zones would permit.
20.
20? Okay.
So it's 30 acres with 600 units.
All right, 20. I guess I was counting just the acreage for that. Anyway,
Yeah.
so 20. And R4, depending on the property, and if you have the perfect square piece and you don't have anything coming out of it, it's close to 12. So but 12 units per acre, you can get a single family product at 0 lot line development at 12 units per acre. So you can really peel those down at 10-ish units per acre. That's 4,300 square foot lots. It's 10 units per acre. So our townhomes and apartments are really fairly regionally low density, but for the city, it's those like R3, R4 is kind of our high-ish, and then that medium zone is like 8,000, 5,000, and then low is much smaller than that, or much larger.
I think changing the terms, all that is important, but to get people to really believe it, there's going to have to be one that is done, that looks beautiful, and people say, oh, that's what it is. It's going to take, in this community, it'll take seeing is believing, I think.
Yeah, Julie.
So when we started talking about this, we used the word clustering, and I'm like, well, what is clustering? Smithfield actually does clustering, and so we happen to be in Logan, so I made my husband continue to Smithfield, and they have done a great job with keeping open space and the clustering. And so I talked to their city planner and asked them why they chose the word clustering, and he said people seem to be calmer about something that is clustered rather than density, because they had the same problem. If you think, Smithfield is a very open rural area, and he says when we started talking about density, he says our people did, but he said there's something calming about the word clustering. And so I agree with the fact that we do need to change our wording. And I think if we provide for people the opportunity to realize places like Smithfield and even past Smithfield are starting to do the same thing. People are moving here. Do we like it? No, of course we don't. But we have to realize in 15, 20 years, as Scott's been saying, we're gonna double in size. And that is something I've had to look at personally, because I was like, yeah, no, stop building, just stop building. But I've come to realize that we can't. But at the same time, I don't feel like North Ogden needs to be the one that provides the lower end income housing, you know, just go into Ogden. They're building on every small little piece they can, lots of apartments. Let's, you know, really look at our density levels here and make sure that we do it in such a way that people are appreciative of the work and they understand. So I agree, Brandon, education is very important and we need to do it from day one. The minute we make the changes, you know, that people need to understand it.
Thanks. Okay, Scott?
I'm good.
Okay.
We haven't held our public hearing yet.
We have not held our public hearing. Okay. Prior to our discussions, would anyone like to open the public hearing?
Public hearing.
We have-
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the public hearing. We have been hearing from quite a few people. But if there's anyone else who would like to add to our public hearing? Entertain a motion to close the public
So
hearing.
yeah, we technically didn't need the motion to open, just the one to close.
Well, I'm new at this. Eric,
No,
put me on the spot here.
You can always have a motion.
Okay, yeah. I over motion.
I make a motion to close the public hearing. I'll second.
Okay, a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor? Voice vote? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the public hearing's closed. Time for our discussion. I again go back to my question where if I'm reading the room right, I think I didn't see any opposition to anything other than the discussions around 7, 8, and 10. Is that accurate? Is there anyone who opposes anything other than 7, 8, and 10? Let's throw that out for a second.
Oh, it all looks good to me.
Okay, I agree with that. So Commissioner Barker stated earlier that he'd like to see this kind of tabled and brought back. And I'm wondering if we couldn't draft something up tonight to keep this moving forward without it having to come back. That's kind of my intent. Like we already wrestled through this for over an hour and a half, you know, can we give specifics enough to staff to keep this thing moving without having to rehear it again? And so that's what I'd kind of like to see us do. If we have any specifics to say. Now, if it's too much, if it's too abstract for us, then, you know, by all means, that should be on the table. But my preference is to move it
If it could be
forward.
written in such a way, even with 8 and 10, like this asterisk idea, you know, I know they are specifically on the place, but like that they could be proposed within the community without maybe a specific location.
Mhm.
I mean, I like generally where the locations are.
What
The possibilities of it is a different question, but
What about this? Do we
today.
like the concept of low impact commercial in our neighborhoods? Because I know, and it's not irrational to say no to this question, you know, to say, hey, let's keep the camel's nose out of the tent is fine. And it's definitely a school of thought, but are we open to this idea to make a recommendation that at least exists? I think that would be step one to this. And then
I'm open to it.
I'm open to.
I'm open to it personally. I'm very open to it. I think it's helpful. Is there anyone who feels different?
It's good. I think.
You know, Brandon, I think it's worth,
Closing it, you lose.
Hang on, Mayor, we have another comment.
okay,
I think just blindly saying, no, we don't want any of that, we lose that potential to have those unique uses that magnify a community. You know, obviously, when everybody thinks, oh, it's a C-store or a tobacco shop or something like that, no. But, you know, wedding venues or different things that fit in a neighborhood, just having the opportunity to be able to say, hey, we welcome that here. We just want to see what you're proposing before we say, yeah, we would let it in that location. So I'm not so concerned that we need to pick a location. We just need to have an avenue that people can look and say, oh, they're open to the idea. Hey, I want to do this cool boutique that would be great to the community. We don't know what it is, but, and maybe it's somewhere different than we show on the map, but some applicant comes in and says, oh, this is perfect. We don't want to just blindly close that off. You know, we want to be able to have those opportunities, but it's crafting it in a way that somebody could feel like they could come forth and ask or propose. But we also want to be able to have the ability to say, no.
It's not
you know, 'cause
appropriate in this.
One
location.
person's beauty is another person's nightmare, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So
Mary, you were saying? Sorry, Scott.
Go ahead with the mayor, Paul.
I'm good, Brandon. I'm good.
Okay, thanks.
I guess coming down and starting to craft up some of that fast tonight. That's put a lot of pressure on you, right?
And again, Commissioner Barker, if it's something we want to see again, I don't want to shut that down just because I'm conducting this meeting. You know, if it's something you really feel like, hey, this needs to be looked at, let's go ahead and go that way. I just feel like in the interest of getting this thing going and you know, not bringing you guys back to another one of these terrible meetings, you know, I'd like to see something happen.
I would just personally, there's no obligation to just push this through really fast. I mean, this coupled with the Title 11, 12 reorganization are probably some of the most important things. that
Absolutely.
the Planning Commission will do this year. So I would like to craft language and have you feel really confident that the map looks right and this seems permissive enough. It gets us to the idea that that you can wholeheartedly say as Planning Commission, yep, this is our recommendation and we like this. And I don't want to wordsmith it on the spot. In 2 weeks, heading into the Christmas or the holiday season is not going to hold anybody up.
Okay. I just don't think we're that far apart,
I agree.
really. I mean, the little things that we've talked about were very specific spots on a map. And I think we're all in agreement that, okay, conceptually this works. That corner, maybe not, you know, and there was a couple concerns, you know, 8, 10, and then obviously the Barker Park thing.
do we have of the potential conservation area? I know we've had it on the map before, but we've never had an ordinance or language to utilize that. Have we got that? And if you talked about it already, I'm sorry.
No, what I talked about in the beginning of this is that the general plan, if supported by the Planning Commission and adopted by the council, will create a laundry list of policy items that we'll bring back over the next, 4 to 6 months, I'd imagine, to craft
Create
those.
that ordinance, and utilize or offer that opportunity to somebody in that area.
Okay, let's work towards a positive motion, even if that motion is to table this item and have it come back. But I'd like to see us work towards something, whether it's approving or recommending approval, recommending a denial, recommending a tabling with some specific items for staff. But I'd like to see us work towards something. Can I have someone submit a motion?
I make a motion to table it with Scott can go back and write up some specific things that we discussed tonight. I'm not sure how to word that part of it.
Yeah, I would just add before we have a second, Mr. Hess, do you feel like you have enough information from the discussion that you could come back with something?
So my only clarification is that what I'll be writing up is language in regards to the points on the map representing 7, 8, and 10 on the commercial zones, to say something along the lines of neighborhood commercial is supported east of Washington, and figuring out how to do it as permissive language that provides an avenue to the community to permit it, but doesn't directly locate it.
Yeah, that's what I'd like.
Right.
Okay,
Good job.
we have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item?
Hang on, who? So Scott and then
Then Commissioner Nancarrow was our second. Further discussion, or are we prepared to vote? Okay, let's call for a vote. Commissioner Lunt.
Yes.
It's in the order that you arrived at the meeting, by the way. Commissioner Nancarrow.
Yes.
Commissioner Barker.
Yeah.
Commissioner Arner.
Yes.
Commissioner Webb.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Did I get everybody?
I vote yes.
Oh, it is in the order in which you arrived at the meeting. Okay, let the record show that. Okay, Commissioner Thomas was a yes vote, right? Okay, thank you. Okay, I took a short recess in the middle there. I'd like to give you guys the same opportunity. Does anybody need a quick recess before we continue on? And do we have an appetite to still get our training in? Imagine our video is kind of short, isn't it, John?
no, it's not. It's 1 full hour.
Yeah. I move we table the training. I'm just kidding. I just got here.
Okay, why don't you go take your break and then we'll reconvene in a few minutes.
It's not me, we will be watching a movie. Well, I'm gonna call it.
Okay.
You're excited. It's
Okay.
really,
I've actually really enjoyed the trainings.
This is
Really?
a training that
So-
we participated in Utah Land Use Institute. It's
Yeah.
really interesting, but it is a full hour and it'll round out our training for the year.
But I'm gonna watch it from Zoom while I
Yeah.
play Mario.
Hey,
Kart.
two things. I think I'm a Mario guy myself. I've been revisiting Mario Sunshine.
Mario Kart is my
Okay.
stress reliever at
So
night.
two things. I think this was really well in it.
This
Sorry to-
is on Zoom.
Yeah, I just
That
thank
might
you
be
for
funny.
putting your hat in there. I voted for you.
Thanks.
Again, now, are you gonna keep going?
Yes,
Don't leave. I can remember that.
okay,
I'll get
yeah,
it, like,
yeah.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
there's no one more educated than you on this, really, including most members of the city council. So, I mean, I just keep going, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, if you have the
it's-
appetite for it.
No, I do. I'm kind of,
You know what?
I mean,
verbiage in our bylaws. I don't even know what you call ours, that we do have a stop is at 9 o'clock, Eric, you know?
Well, I think usually it's 8:30, we can take a break and elect to go longer.
Okay. So what's our appetite? We have an hour, we're staring down an hour, an hour training video. I think it's reasonable either way. If we want to table that, we are going to need to be trained. And I think we need to provide evidence to the state that, right, don't we, that we have been trained? Isn't that
Is there
part of this?
much on the docket for next time
I don't know.
where we could fit it in?
Yeah, we don't know what it'll be on next time yet.
I mean, is there anything pending that,
Yeah, you have 3 massive site plans to review for Village of Providence Point if they bring their applications in today. Not today, sorry, by Friday. So potentially, or potentially very little.
Thoughts? Again, I don't think it's wrong to throw this out. I don't think it's wrong to continue.
John,
Good either way.
some of the communities that, when we were at UI and they were talking about training, had mentioned that they did it on an honor system. They sent the video out and said, you know,
I move that
review
you send
this.
the video out.
I
Now-
like that option.
What if we start it, get 15 minutes in and then honor system the rest? I'm hybriding this.
You just send the video to us.
Okay, apparently,
Those who want to stay and watch it. It'll be
Yeah,
given.
we
Give us
yeah,
some
we-
afterwards.
I'd
Knock
have
us like
you,
they're
I'd have you
eyes.
email me back after you watched it and just,
5 questions, you send out the video
Yep,
and 5
please.
questions.
oh man, now I don't, I mean, now I have to
Now
rewatch.
you have to watch it.
so I'm getting that there's not a lot of appetite to watch this video tonight.
I can go either way. Game if anybody.
That makes it 9:30.
We need a motion to change our agenda.
I make a motion that we have our planner send out the video and we do the training on our own accord for this last hour of training.
I'll second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion on this? Are we, staff, are you feel like we're legally compliant to do it this way?
I mean, I don't think anyone's gonna push back.
You're fired from your volunteer position.
Oh, shoot. Oh, yeah. Okay, any other discussion on this? Okay, let's, can we do a voice vote? All in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we've tabled this item with the intention to, can we email the link then and then we'll respond with an affirmative that we watched it or not?
Yeah, and can I just let Brandon give you his 2 minutes on the prep for it, so you're thinking about,
As long as the minute, I mean,
Yeah.
the movie's only 58 minutes then.
that's
Let's
true.
log these minutes.
That's true. Did you guys have something
Start-
besides the video?
Start at minute number, no, we didn't, but start at minute number 5, because there's a little bit, there's 5 minutes of, or so. Would you have the timestamp?
Yeah, they're not, it's not right at the beginning.
Okay,
You want me to just give me?
yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, so what this session is it's a group of people that are either very interested in planning commissions and their role, or they're actual planning commission members, or they've had some sort of experience with planning commissions. For example, one member is Ted Knowlton, who is on the planning commission in North Salt Lake, but he also works at the Wasatch Front Regional Council as a full-time planner. And then another panel member is Meg Ryan, who works at the Utah League of City and Towns. She did the training in February of 2020 down in Moab. And she deals with, obviously, she gets updated on state law as it pertains to planning and planning commissions and other related issues every year. So these are people that have a lot of experience. Also, one member of the commission or the panel is the longest serving planning commissioner in the state. So that was kind of interesting.
Am I in the video? Am I in the video?
Just kidding. Sorry, he's got to beat my
I snuck up and
He's got like 45 years on.
Oh, man.
So
Something to shoot for, Eric. Something to shoot for.
I'm gonna get him.
So just a couple thoughts. When we had the training from Brett Bateman, when he was serving as the
property rights ombudsman. He kind of went over the technicalities of things like legislative versus administrative decisions and things like that. I thought that this had value because it comes out from more, multiple people's perspective of just practical experience of planning commission, but also more on the philosophical side of things, like just considering the philosophy of what the planning commission should be. And I think that's, as the planning commission and the city looks to the future for what the future of the planning commission in North Ogden should be, I think that that's a kind of a different discussion than just the technicalities of how to, have what type of a decision things are, but what should the role be is of the planning commission. And so this kind of addresses a number of issues related to that. There are a number of really strong opinions expressed. The nature of the Utah Land Use Institute is it kind of brings different land use professionals together, lawyers, real estate professionals, and then planners. And so you get a range of opinions, and it's not quite a debate, but it gets rather close to that type of format at times. And so, these are people from different areas of the state. So you're going to get some strong opinions and things that might, perk up your ears or seem a little bit different than maybe your philosophy. I know there's 4 or 5 that comments that I thought, I'd take a pretty different point of view on that. So don't take any one comment too harshly or seriously. And if it's different than how we do things in North Ogden, it's just to shake up, and get a different point of view and perspective on things. And let's see. Oh, I think it'd be really helpful if you just take some notes when you watch it, and try and develop your own thoughts and philosophies about what the future of the planning commission could be in North Ogden, what it should be, and what role it could play, just so that you have, there's a vision that's developed, and we can then at some point hopefully get your thoughts collected on that to, help get you out of just the mindset of you're having to deal a lot with, does this meet these 5 points of the ordinance, and back up and take a bigger picture of why should we be here in the first place? And if we're, if you think that we should be in a different place or moving towards a different direction than we are, then those thoughts would be interesting and helpful to get your feedback on. So any other questions on that? Okay.
Thanks.
Oh, there's one note. From about 8:20, the 8 minutes, 20 seconds into about 11:30, you can skip those for sure, just because it's essentially just talking about a new state law that's training. And so it's kind of, there's no point in watching training about what training, that we need training and what the requirements of that are. So.
Thanks for saving us the 3 minutes and 10 seconds there. Okay. Okay, that concludes number 6. 7, remarks from the planning commissioners. Any?
I'm going to be absent on December 1st meeting.
December 15th or 1st.
So do the prominence point one if you can, because I have to excuse myself anyway.
Okay. Any other concerns about a quorum then on that meeting?
I
No.
will be here on the 15th.
Okay.
Of December.
Okay, I'll plan on conducting that meeting then, Commissioner Thomas. Okay. I'm getting good at it. Okay. Any other remarks? How about from our planning director?
So the city council heard the accessory building standards. They accepted the recommendations as sent forward by the planning commission, with the exception of they have now permitted metal buildings, metal structures, so size not determined there. The code ordinance still does require integration of the main building of the house and the accessory structure. So that now leaves it up to interpretation by us to determine whether color is enough of an integration and what that looks like. But I'm sure there's information to be seen in that. And then just a quick note. So planning for the city council will be hearing the the Title 11 and 12 reorganization next week for an initial conversation about it. We don't expect them to take action until December 14th, specifically to give us time to clean up and finalize some tweaks. So we're going all the way back to 2019 when this zoning text amendment was opened, 2019-06, because it seems like that's the copy of the plan that they got, that the consultants got. And we're hit and miss on which of these zoning text amendments from that point forward, which there have been a number, 25 or something, which ones got integrated. So we've been going backwards and integrating those back in, but expect for the beginning of next year, I would expect we're under a new code, which is going to be a learning curve for all of us, especially staff, to have that reorganized code, but looking forward to having these pretty major projects wrapped up. So thank you for all your help and assistance, and I've made it past my 6 months and John hasn't canned me yet, so that's a positive. I'm on my probation period. But,
We actually do have an appointment tomorrow.
this is true. I should have mentioned this next meeting. But yeah, really, thank you, everybody. It's been really great so far, and I'm looking forward to continuing the work.
Thank you. I am sorry you have to interpret what matches a metal structure. I disagreed with the city council on that particular. Glad they have passed the ordinance, but I disagreed with that metal building thing. I don't know how to enforce it other than to disallow them. So, but that's why they get paid the big bucks, I guess. Okay, anything from John?
Just thank you for all your work on this, the code, everything. I mean, this last probably 18 months has been really intensive work from the planning commission and some of the other committees that are involved in growth in the city. So just thank you again for all your work. And I think that's it.
Yeah, I thought the general plan committee did a pretty good job there. Like, I was impressed with the way they presented their ideas tonight. I really enjoyed that.
Well, and it's nice to have that back and forth, that, hey, this is a good idea. No, I don't like that idea, and talk about the reasons why, because fine tuning is what this is all about.
Yeah, I thought our open forum worked well for that. And I would have almost rather had them up here around the table maybe for some of it, but I thought that worked well. So, okay, any other thoughts? Anything else? Okay, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. I'll second it.